has been around since 2019. Yeah, initially was the brainchild and suggested brainchild of Thabo Mbeki, who saw South Africa within the context of Africa as a region, but it took a long time to finalize. It has advantages, it has disadvantages. We've seen some economies grow as a consequence of it, others essentially just not move in any direction. There are lots of issues in terms of illegal immigrants and all of that. But if we look at regional economic integration, I've opened that already. Right. So what we see economic integration is, guys, it is where we have different countries with each their own policies and their own laws and their own skill sets and their own core competencies and their own uniqueness. Essentially, agree that on a regional basis, they will become an economic powerhouse. Right. So I think it involves being part of a trade bloc, but it is more significant than a trade bloc, and I'll explain that in some instances. And what happens there is that it allows for benefits. So it allows for you to not have the stuff that you export to another country have to reduce the prices because there are import taxes, import duties, and levies, and those kinds of things. It allows for the free movement of people and skills. It allows for the movement of services without import duties, etc. And it also is, oh my gosh, I tell you guys not to do it, and look what I've done here. Sorry about that. And it also allows for the sort of movement of products. And the truth is, it is on a smaller scale level the definition of globalization, the free movement of products, services, goods, and finances. And obviously, you can see that the different terminologies that I've used there. So, in terms of what it does, the first one, it promotes trade creation. So it allows you to import from countries within your block, and it kickstarts different economies. So the thinking in terms of that is, if you import X from me, you will grow that aspect of industry, you will get your balance of trade more sorted, and it will be favorable to your total overall economy. So it really is that we see this movement. The danger with this is that it hopefully is always based on cost advantage. However, and it will give economies of scale, it will grow businesses, etc. One of the concerns, and I need to say that sometimes the agreements limit you to having to use a supplier from a country within your region that might be more expensive than going, for example, to China. And I'm just defaulting to China. So it allows for trade creation. Okay. It allows for local economies to grow. And then it allows for those kinds of movement of labor and resources where people who have in a particular area where those skills are deficient in another country can go there without having to worry about visas and those kinds of things. The key thing is that we know that different nations are known for different skill sets. So you're allowed to share those skill sets across a number of nations, essentially benefiting each of the nations. Guys, and then in terms of the other benefits that we're hoping to achieve, I think the first one is to improve economic status, improve economic political stability. So what often happens is, if you're part of this regional power, you are not just answerable to your own people, you're also answerable to members within the regional power. So, if there are human rights issues, if there are other issues. Generally, the entire grouping will step in and try and broker deals to improve relationships. Um, Thinking is it'll bring about those things. Now, I'm not going to comment about Africa in terms of that, but guys, let's be honest, those aren't tick boxes for every nation in our grouping. We've got political instability, we've got coups, we've got um, yeah, presidents being overthrown, we've got military taking over, governance. I'm not going to comment on those. You can do that analysis yourself, guys. And then trade diversion. These are the challenges, and my apologies, I should have maybe highlighted that, but these are the challenges. The one challenge links to my point from earlier, where if you're part of a regional economy, it is expected that you will import from countries within that particular region. But the guarantee is not always there that you can import at a price lower than you can get from countries outside the region. So what often happens is that in a regional economic area, they'll put instruments of trade restrictions, so limiting the number of items you can import from a country outside the economic region so that we can grow the economy locally. The potential positivity around that is that what might happen is that this country and these businesses within that country, by manufacturing more, getting experience in that particular area, getting to economies of scale and scope, and the ability to manufacture cheaply, would one day be able to compete and be at the same price as the company from a country outside the region. But that's a long-term hope. Okay. So that is the first one. You can have a look at it. I would avoid this, guys. I would avoid this, like, yeah, I avoid asparagus. Okay. I would avoid it that badly. Sorry, that is a really bad example. Or the way I avoid scary movies. I don't watch scary movies. Yeah. Guys, so the second one, yeah, the African Continental Free Trade Area. Yeah, so I think part of it, and sorry, I needed to just also highlight that part. Sorry. So remember, that's the first aspect, and the second aspect was in the context of that. My apologies for that. So liberalization is really about advancing economies. It is about the way we promote economic growth. And liberalization is that there, guys. Getting rid of tariff barriers, import taxes, import limitations, so that your country and the businesses within that country can achieve economies of scale, because we are going to export more. And then free trade is when there's a movement of products and services across different regions and across different borders, without having to worry about import duties and things like that. Protectionism is the opposite. It's where government steps in to protect local companies by imposing import duties, by imposing limits in terms of the number of items that can be imported versus the items that have to be manufactured locally. So you can restrict imports, but also you can set import quotas, and government is involved. It is the opposite of free trade, guys. Sorry about that, guys. My throat is going. So, in terms of the World Trade Organization, the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, the thinking was that we would be in a world now where you have this free flow of products and services across traditional boundaries. Now, what has really happened is, I think, if you allow the freedom to not impose limitations, I think you would hope that It can happen when there is a level playing ground, when we can manufacture using our technologies, using our skills at the same rate as the offshore market. And it's very difficult to compete with China there, guys. And then also no coercion. So when people negotiate in terms of imports and exports, you compete, you negotiate on an equal footing. And unfortunately, when we think, and I'm not now talking about the assignment here, but when you think of Brexit, South Africa negotiates on an unequal footing against, in particular, China and Russia and India. Guys, and then obviously it's about getting rid of all restraints and restrictions and allowing that free movement. In terms of Africa, those are the things that have happened. People have moved, countries have moved to more a free market system. Um, we have these trading blocks that essentially gave us the initial building blocks of the overall Africa agreement. And then, yeah, I think it's a massive one, and it's only smaller in terms of the size of the overall economy to that of the EU. I I think, guys, have a read of this. I've tried to summarize it as best I can. It's worth having the briefest of glances at those three articles there. I have summarized those further, but it really translates into what I've already said, guys. The single market, doing business internally, promoting economies internally, creating this idea that Africa becomes an economic powerhouse with each of the component parts of that economic powerhouse, Africa as an economic powerhouse, benefiting from the arrangement. There are some of the other objectives, but it translates to that. I hate this one. Sorry, guys. My apologies. And then impact of trade openness on the South African cement industry. So the one thing that we must remember in terms of the South African cement industry, it's not really a significant value add industry. It's not as if it's the choice between 9 karat gold or 24 karat gold. We're not turning 9 karat gold into 24 or gold or into 24 karat gold. So it's not a significant value add industry. So I think what has happened is that when we see trade liberalization, it's quite tough to survive in as an African nation against some of the stronger Asian American economies. So it's very, very tough. So the kinds of things that we do to try and manage that is we add tariffs, guys. And tariffs are monetary in nature, they're quantitative in nature. So the first one, you determine when you export the tariff based on the value add. So I used a silly example. My apologies. I think I stole it from the textbook. So if you had to export or import 24 karat gold, because you're adding so much more value than exporting, I should have put 9 karat gold there, it would have actually made more sense. You're going to pay significantly more ad valorem levy on that 24 karat gold, even though in weight it is exactly the same. And then generic tariffs is where we look at the value of the item and we apply a tariff. I think you guys saw, I shared it on the group, that Timu will now, no, sorry, Shine will have a flat 45% import tariffs placed on it. Did you guys have a glance at that when I posted it? It was really not to pick on Tamir, although it did look like I was picking on Tamir. I don't know if you guys saw that. So if you buy from Shine or Sheen, my apologies, I don't know how to say it. It's a 45% non-negotiable tariff. Guys, and then there are other restrictions that they have. So essentially, you limit the quantity that you can import. So in terms of protecting our clothing industry, our clothing manufacturing industry, what has happened is we have limited the number of items of clothing we can import from China, for example, and then we give import permits. but these are so expensive that it's very difficult to keep your prices down in terms of local suppliers, in terms of local buyers, my apologies. And then ways that governments step in to improve opportunities for import and export. And again, this is awful. We can't compete against American farmers because American farmers are heavily subsidized. Our farmers aren't really subsidized. You give people chances of tax holidays. So what happens is that you initially don't have to pay local taxes until you get a foothold and until you start growing. It's part of what government does to attract in investment. Yeah, and then exchange rate differentials. I think what happens is that you charge, in terms of administration, lower exchange rates in order to bring certain items into a country and allow the other area to grow. And then profit repatriation. I think often what happens here, we agree that if an MNC settles in a particular area, should they leave, they would leave their capital investments behind. So again, your return has to be so significant if you agree to that, guys. And then trade promotions. Yeah. So the first one is staffing concession. I think what happens is that you try and personalize and customize and ultimately make it what the expected standards are in a region. But initially, you use home country employees until the business grows, etc. And then once you've established a footprint, you can bring in skills from elsewhere. Transfer pricing, yeah. So what happens here is essentially you charge a certain um, transfer of monies between certain areas, and then what happens is you then get your items from certain companies where the transfer prices are lower. Please hold